This system weighs 63 pounds, so it does have some weight to it. So might want to do a team lift if necessary and get some help picking it up. When you go ahead and open up the box, your water filter is packed nice and securely inside here. And basically everything ships assembled, and we'll just have to take it apart when we go ahead and do the install. In terms of working with the plumbing fittings, depending on your setup, you might need something like this. I got here a small adjustable wrench, a larger adjustable wrench, some channel locks, or a pipe wrench. I'm working with copper pipe. All my piping is 1 inch. So I have some copper pipe here, 1 inch in size. This is type L copper pipe, by the way, which is stronger than type M. Definitely recommend you use that. And then various fittings. I'm using press fittings. So I got a pack here of 90-degree elbows. I'll be using quite a few of those. I also have a couple of 45-degree fittings in case I need those. I have some bushings to connect straight sections of pipe. And probably one of the most important fittings that is part of this collection are these adapters. This is a 1-inch NPT to a 1-inch pipe adapter. So this is what is going to interface with the actual filter housing itself. We'll wrap this with thread tape and screw it into the filter housing and pray that it doesn't leak. You're going to need a pipe cutter as well. Make sure it opens up large enough and it is compatible with the same size pipe that you'll be using. So this one does open up to 1 3/8 so I can cut 1-inch pipe with it. You'll need some PTFE thread tape, which is basically Teflon thread tape. This is a brand called Blue Monster. You can use just standard white PTFE thread tape as well, but do make sure that any thread tape you use is rated for potable water. Another option is to use thread sealant. So this is a liquid thread sealant that could be used in place of thread tape. It comes shipped just like this, fully assembled with a filter wrench and with the installation manual. The inlet is over here on the right and the outlet is on the left. So the default configuration is like this, but depending on your home plumbing and your setup, you might have to have the inlet on the left and the outlet on the right. That just happens to be my case in this situation. So I will be showing you how to reverse the direction of the flow on this 3-stage filter system. Before we get started on the actual install, let me first set up the filter housing so they are running in the right direction. The default configuration for this system is in, flowing this direction, and out. I need it to go in this side and flow through here and out. This is the first stage of the filter system, which is a sediment filter, and we want this to be first before we get into the next 2 stages. So the first step we're going to do is remove the filter cartridges, and this will be the first time you get to use the filter wrench, but that simply slides on, and depending on the way it's oriented, it's going to work better depending on the way that the cartridge is oriented in there. So that's why I had to flip it over and we'll just kind of knock those loose. Express Water ships these installed as one unit, which makes sense because why would you ship them separately? It would take up a lot more packaging. So we go ahead and release those. They're not very tight at this point, so we just set those aside one at a time. So now that I have those off, I'm going to remove all 3 of the pressure gauges. Actually, they loosen up by hand really easily, so you don't even need a adjustable wrench. This thread tape is probably going to have to get redone because once you take something that's covered with thread tape off once, typically you can't reuse the thread tape. So you're going to want to rewrap these threads with another few layers of thread tape. Next thing we got to remove are these 12 screws. They're a 1/2 inch hex. So what I've done is I've just grabbed the socket, connected it to my drill. That way I can be a little more efficient with removal, because efficiency is king. So this is my last screw, so I'm going to go ahead and support the filter housing brackets and slowly lower it down. Okay, now all you got to do is rotate it 180 degrees. So this was the original flow. You can make note of, it's probably hard for you to see that on there, but this side of each housing says in, out, in, out, in, out. So I'm just going to rotate it. So my ins start to the left and my outs come out to the right. I'll make sure it aligns with the holes again. Screw one screw in by hand first, just so it can be supported. And then we're going to carefully reinstall all the screws, and just be sure to make them tight, but you don't want to over tighten them because you don't want to strip out the threads, because it is a plastic housing that these are screwing into. They're all installed. I'm just going to go ahead and sock them down now. Again, not too tight, but tight enough. This is an impact driver, but I have it set to its lowest torque rating. So I know that it's not going to be too much on these threads. So now the pressure gauges have to go back on to the brackets. Since we took them off, we need to replace the thread tape. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Got myself a brand new roll of PTFE thread tape, and I'm going to go ahead and put about 4 layers on there. And whenever you're putting thread tape on a thread, you want to go in a clockwise direction. That way it doesn't try to unravel when you are screwing the thread into the threaded hole. Do that for each gauge. Screw it back down. You'll feel it start to get firm, and just go ahead and turn it until it's facing the right orientation, which would be to the front of the unit. At this point, we have the pressure gauges reinstalled, and the flow direction is now going in the correct direction for my setup. So I'm going to go ahead and put this aside. I'm not going to put the filters back in, because from this point on, I'm going to want to keep this whole unit as light as possible for hanging it and connecting the plumbing to it. So what I'm going to do with my whole house ultimate protection filtration system is I'm basically going to connect it within this run of pipe right here. Now, because it's a little crowded over here from when they installed the UV filter, they had to go in and then out. This section is very crowded, and if I mount the housing just directly here, so it's directly in line, it's just not going to fit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to install another board underneath this current board, and then I'm going to mount the express water system somewhere down here, and I'm going to tap into into this pipe run. Basically, it's to come down, lower, to go in, and then back out, and then back up into the water softener. In most cases, I do recommend for you to install a bypass on any kind of water system. I'm actually not going to do a bypass for this installation. I did do a bypass in my last installation, which I will link below in the description. That was done on PEX piping, but due to the nature of this system and the complexity of it, I've opted to not do the bypass. So now that the board is in place and we have our whole system with brackets, I'm gonna go ahead and kind of eyeball where the location should be. Today is actually day 2 of this video, which is why I had a wardrobe change. I ended up having to run to the store to pick up a few more 90-degree elbow fittings, and after I got back, it was dinner time, so I decided just to continue the rest of this project for the next day. So this is actually the next day, and I'm ready to jump back in and get started. So this is my game plan. My water enters in from the well right from this line right here. As I said, this branches out and goes to the sprinkler system. So I'm going to leave this alone. But now, since this existing pipe that's right here is really close to this back wall for this previous system, I can't just simply come down and go straight into the filter system, because this sits about 5 inches off of the wall. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut into this pipe right here, install a 90-degree fitting on here, and then drop down a few inches, another 90-degree, and then come straight in to the filter system. This whole section of pipe right here is going to go away, but I can reuse a good portion of it. And then I'm going to come out of the filter system, 90-degree fitting up, a section of pipe up, and then I will a 90 into here and another 90 back this direction, and then I'll just continue on with the piping going into the water softener. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off the power to my water softener and to my UV lamp. So I'm just going to go ahead and unplug this system and that as well. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off any kind of shut-off valves that are around the area that I'm working. So I'm going to shut off this valve right here. So this will cut off water that comes out from the water softener. And I'm also going to shut off the valve that is coming directly out of my well's pressure tank. And I'll shut this valve off as well, which goes out to the lawn sprinklers. You really want to shut off all these valves because once you cut into the pipe, water is going to leak out of the pipe, obviously. And you don't want water to start pouring out of the pipe all the way up from your house's plumbing. You're going to need a bucket to put under the pipe when you start cutting into it because it's going to leak everywhere. So obviously you want something to catch all that water. Okay, so now I can start laying out the pipe. So the first thing I gotta do is install these adapters. So that's my 1-inch MPT adapter. This screws right into the inlets of, well, the inlet and the outlet of the filter system. I did notice that the threads are very sharp and they have some burrs on them. So I'm just gonna go and run some Scotch-Brite over the thread before I put thread tape on there. If you don't have any Scotch-Brite, you can go ahead and maybe use some sandpaper or emery cloth to smooth out those threads, because you don't want them to be super sharp, because then it's just going to cut the thread tape. I'm going to wrap thread tape on these threads at least 4 layers, because I really cannot afford for these pipes to leak, because there's not really going to be a way for me to tighten them once I pressurize the system. Another thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to put a thin layer of liquid thread sealant on here as well, because I do not want to redo this. I'll put a very thin layer of this liquid thread sealant, otherwise known as pipe dope, on the outside, and that should pretty much guarantee that I don't get any leaks. And we screw that in, hand tight first, then use a wrench to tighten it down the rest of the way. Don't go too tight, because you don't want to crack the housing. With the combination of thread tape and pipe dope on there, it's going to be very lubricated, the threads, so it's really easy to over tighten. So you got to really restrain yourself when you're tightening it, to not over tighten it, because if you over tighten it and crack this housing right here, you're going to be in big trouble. Now we just do the same exact thing for the other side. I can start dry fitting my pipe to build up to here on the inlet, and on the other side, the outlet. I'll dry fit everything, make sure everything's sized correctly, mark it off, and then I'll start crimping it. Now, this video is not meant to be a lesson in plumbing, but just want to remind you that when you cut pipe, make sure you deburr the pipe. So this is a twist deburr. Some pipe cutters have them included, but you want to deburr the inside and then the outside of the pipe, especially if you're using these press fittings like this. There's an O-ring inside there. You do not want to cut the O-ring. If you cut the O-ring when you slide a pipe in there, because it's sharp, then your fitting will leak. Now I have this section dry fitted. See, all the pipes are loose still. I haven't connected anything yet, but it's all dry fitted and ready for me to use the Pro Press to crimp it. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and do now. This is a Vevor brand press tool. It has the 1-inch jaws on here, and it's like $1,000 compared to $3,000 for like a Milwaukee or a Rigid Pro Press tool. So I'm borrowing this one from my work, and gonna go ahead and use this to press on the pipe. Now you want to make sure that none of the pipes move during this process, because you don't want to have to repress them. So now all the fitting joints have been pressed. Now it's time to tackle the out. Now we can go ahead and dry fit the system. So I'm going to mark the ends of the pipe where it fits in to the fittings, and I'm going to keep my eye on those pencil markings just to make sure that nothing moves when I'm pressing everything. Okay guys, so that was a little bit of work getting this plumbed in and connected, but now the hardest part is behind us. The only thing left to do now is to install the filter cartridges and turn on the system, pressurize it, and make sure that nothing leaks. And I pray that nothing leaks. Okay, first up is the clear housing. This is the polyphosphate filter, which is the anti-scale filter. So this one, when I first got my kit, remember it was on this side, but we reversed it, so now it starts here. So I'm going to install the filter in the first slot, and make sure when you are screwing the housing in, the O-ring stays in position, and then this gasket right here stays in position as well, and that your filter cartridge on the inside does not get tipped or anything while you're screwing it in. It always helps to apply some upward pressure from the bottom and then slowly start to screw it in until it gets started. And once it gets started, you can remove pressure from the bottom and just go ahead and tighten it up by hand. Okay, so I'm going to do everything just hand tight at first, and then I will tighten them all down with the filter wrench once I have all three of them in. Number 2 is the kinetic degradation fluxion filter, and this is going to filter out heavy metals from your water. And last but not least in the series is the activated carbon block filter. This filter is found on even the standard filtration system, and it's kind of like a go-to filter media for water because it filters out just a bunch of stuff, including chlorine and other types of funk that can be inside your water that gives it an off taste. So now all these are hand tight. I'm going to go ahead and tighten them the rest of the way with the filter wrench. You do want them to be pretty tight because it doesn't take a whole lot of pressure to blow by the seal up top if they're not good and tight. So tighten them down pretty good. Obviously you don't have to go crazy, you don't have to put all your weight into it, but make sure that you make them tight enough so you don't have an issue when you pressurize your system and you start leaking. I'm going to open up my main valve now, and as soon as I do, we'll start to see water flow into the clear housing. Oh, wow. Oh my gosh. Did you see this filter become instantly dirty as soon as I turn on my water? I've been drinking that, guys. That is insane. I mean, we had a sediment filter after the water softener, but oh my gosh. I did not expect this to look like that. So anyway, what I'm gonna do now is just look at the system and make sure that I don't see any leaks. And like I said, I pray that I don't see any leaks because I really would have to redo all this piping if I had a leak in the pipe. All right, so I just got done inspecting the entire system for leaks and I found no leaks. Yes. That's what I was hoping for. Your final steps are to run cold water until clear, plus an additional 5 minutes, shut off the water and wait 30 minutes, Then run cold water for an additional 10 minutes. Then shut off your faucet. And after that, enjoy your new water. Now what you will notice right away is you're going to see a lot of tiny little air bubbles inside of your water. That's totally normal, and that can last like a few days, up to a few days, depending on how much you use your water.